watching Morning at NTV.
Okay, welcome back and many thanks for staying with us right here at Morning at NTV with me, Romeo Busiku and Malaki Villa. The conversation in our press review is about the East African integration. The Minister of State for East African Community Affairs, Julius Mawanda, says that we have achieved 95% of integration. Well, this revelation did not go well with some of his parliamentarians who said, no way, with what is happening with Rwanda, with what is happening with Tanzania expelling some of our people, we cannot have reached that 95% that he's talking about. Even Kagame, he also says, 95, maybe not, maybe 70, but then there is still more that is wanting to achieve 100%. Right about now, Walter Mwesiji did do a report yesterday about the East African integration. We are going to show you that clip and then return with this banter.
The process to have an integrated East African community has so far gone through 3 stages, including monetary union, customs union, and common market, and is now at the stage of political federation. The select members of committee will from today start collecting public views about what they want included in the constitution that will govern the community when it's in place.
Membership of the political confederation, areas of cooperation, governing structure, modes of decision-making, the governance principles of the confederation, the relationship between the partner states and the confederal authority, the funding mechanism for the operation of the federal authority.
In 2018, President Museveni was selected to provide political guidance and oversee the formulation of a constitution for the East African community. Today, as he launched the consultation process, Museveni urged the attending members to use this opportunity as insurance for the partnering states.
Economic prosperity alone may not immunize you against aggression by bigger powers. You cannot easily achieve it if you remain separate countries. That's why we talk of federation. In fact, confederation, I see it as a transitional stage. The actual aim should be federation, so that we can have a strong country, a strong center of gravity for Africa.
So far, members of the East African community have implemented some commitments, including establishing one-stop border posts, harmonizing the East African passport, and removal of visa fees for cross-border movement of citizens, among others. The partnering states are now in a process of establishing required institutions to attain a single currency by 2040. However, it is worth noting that political confederation of the states will not translate into a loss of sovereignty or creation of a new East African state. Representatives from all the member states, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan, attended today's launch at State House in Entebbe.
Okay, Mala, the East African integration constitution came out yesterday. We are looking good so far, but then, according to Mawanda, 95% integration. What do you make of that? Do you really believe now that Rwanda is just arresting our people without due process, some of our people are being expelled from Rwanda, Ugandan lawyers cannot practice in Kenya? How have we reached 95 integration? You're not the expert, but then
yeah.
Let's just have this banter.
Exactly. You know, being in the business space, I'm totally not in agreement with what the minister said. 95% is far-fetched,
yeah.
Especially when you look at what's happening on the ground with regards to, let me just talk about the business space because that's what I'm conversant with. Trade between the EAC countries still not streamlined. There's still quite a number of barriers there. We're looking at non-tariff barriers whereby there are a lot of stringent rules for you. If you're Ugandan, for you to move your goods to Tanzania, for example, you have to go through a rigorous process, many standards that you have to achieve. And you're looking at, I thought we are a bloc. I thought we are the EAC. It's not just between Uganda, Tanzania, or Uganda, Kenya, Uganda, and we're not just talking about the non-tariff barriers alone where there are stringent measures. We're also looking at the tariffs. There's still conversations with regards to having the free market, so to speak, or a common market, so to speak, whereby taxes are, negotiated, because you know that when you have to move your goods, for example, from Kenya to Uganda, the cost there, especially when it comes to customs, are very, still high, so to speak. And of course, traders are saying that, hey, we thought that we are an EAC, when will we have a common market, so to speak. And so when you're looking at conversations with regards to us trying to achieve, that space whereby in 2040, by 2040, we'll have one common currency. People look at it and they're thinking, okay, all right, 2040 is just around the corner. What have we made so far to warrant, that hope that by 2040, all this, pretty much stumbling blocks will be cleared.
So with what is happening right now, with the current standoff between Uganda and Rwanda, what is happening to our lawyers in Kenya, and what is happening to our locals in Tanzania, don't you think this is wishful thinking that maybe by 2040 we would have fully integrated into the East African Confederation?
It is, and I think especially when you're coming to, yesterday I looked at, and even today morning we've looked at this particular political confederation, booklet, which is here and what was launched yesterday. One of the key facets is over and above us pushing for the integration, the individual states will not lose their sovereignty. Now, striking that balance is what is tricky. So when you talk about, Uganda, Rwanda, the row that has been there, especially now that is rife, of course, from early this year, we're looking at February. The conversation has been, how do we strike a balance between us sitting together, coming up with an amicable solution to which we can, stop this impasse and still make sure that the two uncles feel like they still have power over their own countries. And of course, they're coming, yes, the two uncles. My former co-host, Uncle D, used to call them, the two uncles, so I picked it up. But it's still a conversation, striking that balance, especially in this particular space whereby a majority are just saying this is a game of egos. One ought to just sit down and say, enough is enough. Because at the end of the day, the person who's suffering, the person who bears the hardest brunt is the common person down there, the trader down there, the business person down there. So I think it's about time that balance is stricken, because they're saying that you should not tamper with the individual sovereignty of the states, but we need to find a way of working together and sorting out issues.
That has been the case with Rwanda and Uganda. One country accusing the other of subversive activities and arming of rebels to destabilize each other's region. So when it comes to sovereignty, you are dead on right on that. So what is a political confederation and what it's not? Individual countries will keep their sovereignty, but the creation of a new East African state, that's where many people have been misled. They thought maybe with the integration would have like one common country, Uganda, Kenya, Burundi, Tanzania, Southern Sudan, but no. All these countries will maintain their sovereignty, and the establishment of a political confederation does not necessitate the creation of an East African state. I think that was the main pointer there, because many people are asking, can't we come up with some sort of justice system in the East African court whereby if something happens, a leader in Uganda commits some egregious human rights violations, can we hold him to account using the East African court? Now, with this in place, saying that a confederation does not necessarily mean an East African state, it will make it highly impossible. But in my opinion, I was thinking if we had some kind of East African court, we would be able to rein in on some of the dictators and bad apples in our leadership. That is in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan, Burundi, yes. But without that, we are sitting ducks in that regard. If the court says no, first exhaust first exhaust any chances you can get from the local courts, and then maybe we can see what we can do in that regard. But it's not working. We need like a strong court that can rein in the bad apples in East Africa. Yes, if we are to realize integration.
And and that's why I think with all these issues that are coming through, when you're looking at them, crafting a constitution that will govern all these states, for me, I'm keen to look at not just the formulation of the constitution. Well, they're saying that even the public will be given an opportunity to chip in. But for me, it's not just what is written amazingly well on document, it's what is implemented, enforced and implemented. So, especially now with the impasse, we all thought and we were all happy. We breathed a sigh of relief. And I'm talking on behalf of the business people, especially them that are trading between Uganda and Rwanda. They thought that finally this is going to come to an end, especially after they, shook hands in Angola and they thought that it's done. But hey, we're
shook
here.
Hands in Angola. I think he was trying to hoodwink us. He was there saying,
it was just a
you know
diplomatic
what?
stunt.
Rwanda is going to respect whatever has been agreed right here in Angola. And I could really see that actually he was just taking us for a ride. Because in September, they agreed. The only thing that has held water since that meeting after August in September, it's only that fact that both countries should desist from media propaganda against each other. That has held water for now.
But not
the
100% though.
I don't think from the Ugandan side we haven't really used social media to bash the Rwandan side, because in our opinion, Ugandans, the citizens right here, we actually love Rwandese.
Right.
I love Rwandans, people from Rwanda. The problem is the two leaders, they have their own problems, you know, dating back to 1997, you know the story. They went there in Congo to ask Mobutu, and then, yes, because of money, they continued fighting. So even the border standoff, you can really see that the issue is about money and not anything else. So we have here Kagame. He was asked a very important question. There is a detailed interview right here in the Daily Monitor, page 30. He was asked, does the East African community have the mechanisms to resolve the disputes that we are currently having? And he said there is always one mechanism that is simple and straightforward, and that is people reaching out to one another saying, let's talk.
Yeah.
Dialogue. But then he has
everything.
shunned dialogue. Verifiably, he has told us he wasn't going to show up for the November 18th meeting, which they requested to be called off because of his people being arrested without due process and held up in Ugandan prisons in droves.
I listened to him again critically, still with regards to these meetings and this, of course, dialogue spaces that were being organized. And he was speaking to NTV Kenya's Smear TV, Vidyarthi, and he said something that was very powerful. And I think it spoke volumes to the perceptions of the two leaders towards each other. And he said that even in these meetings that are being organized, we only hear of them in the media spaces. That's what he said. I was like, what's happening underneath? What is it that we're not saying? And so for me, I'm just keen on not just, having all, the entire mass and all these people from the EAC being happy about this particular process. But for me, down to when we get this particular constitution, what will be the prospects? What will be the, pointers to making sure that this constitution is indeed enacted and implemented, that person down there, Omuntu Wawansi, as we call them here in Uganda, can feel the benefits of this particular merger.
I understand what you're saying,
for me,
Mala.
that's
Yes.
I think the cream of it all.
Because I understand what you're trying to say is, if we had a constitution that is actually binding, we wouldn't have our leaders running off to maybe Angola to have issues resolved. We would have them all those issues resolved within the East African community. Yes, I do agree with you on that. And Kagame was asked whether he was optimistic that the issues will be ironed out in a harmonious manner. And this was his response. I've always been optimistic. It is good to be optimistic that things are going to work out. If things are addressed properly and issues resolved, it would be good for everyone. Everyone benefits, so why not remain optimistic? At some point, things will work out the way we want them to. When he's talking to the media, you can really see that this is Kagame, the pacifist, the guy that is willing to, talk to President Museveni to resolve the issues. But then later on, you'll see some press reviews saying, no, we are not going to talk because of ABCD. You did not notify us. We had to read the newspaper to find out about the meeting, so we are canceling. So dialogue isn't working as we speak.
How I'd love, and I'm happy to hear him being very positive. I'm happy to see the president of Uganda being totally positive about some fruit being born out of this particular dialogue that they hope and plan to have. But for me, I'd be happy to hear them give themselves timelines. Just give yourself timelines. That's all we want to hear.
Timelines might lead to war.
No,
sometimes
give us
lead to
timelines,
war.
because you see,
Then,
what you're
like
having...
Rwanda
what
giving
you're
a
having,
timeline to Uganda?
No, timelines in terms of, hey, our citizens. For example, Kagame goes to, Rwanda, to his people and tells them, we are planning on a dialogue. It's always been the news, dialogue. But the question is, when? When? So timelines to that when is what we want to hear. When are you going to agree to sit down and for us to be hopeful that something positive will turn out or come out of that particular conversation?
They've done that.
So for me, it's timelines on when they're going to sit and have
timelines
this
have happened. Timelines had been drawn. After August, there was one in August. There was one in August after the meeting in Angola. There was one in September. There was another on October 17th, on November 13th, and then 18th. Both of them called off. So to me, when it comes
all
to
of which Kagame said that he only
Yes.
heard of in the media.
So when it comes to Uganda, I think Uganda has actually fulfilled their end of the bargain, which is keep this our side of the border open, continue, you know, letting these individuals from either side transact their businesses. The problem is on the Rwandan side. Now, let me continue to reiterate this. When it comes from Uganda, we have no problem with the people of Uganda. It's just
Of
these
Rwanda.
two, of the people of Rwanda, we
Yes.
have no problem with them.
Yeah.
The issue is just these two leaders. They just need to come together
And sit.
and sit and talk.
Right.
For the last 30 years, there are Rwandese people right here in Uganda who have
course.
started here,
Yeah.
grown up here,
Yeah.
and they feel like they are Ugandans.
Yeah.
But with this impasse between the two countries, it brings back these people into the spotlight.
Yeah.
Where does it leave these people who haven't been to Rwanda in the last 30 years?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's it for this particular conversation. Keep your views coming. Of course, Rwanda accusing Uganda of holding its people in the hundreds of people, of course, and the president was actually saying that Uganda has not even made any efforts to present them to the courts of law. And of course, Uganda accusing Rwanda of espionage. So hashtag morning at NTV, let us engage. At this point in time, we'd like to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with so much more. Stay with us.
You're watching